So this video is for men. I talk about men a lot on this channel, and some people might think that I hate men or things like that people say, but I don't hate men. I just recognize the patterns of men. I recognize the male nature, and I just decided to share my insights and my experience with women so they would not have to go through the heartbreak and pain as much as I did, so they could learn. But I also have videos here on this channel for men. I have a playlist for men, and I'm going to do this video for men, right? So it's titled, men fear intimacy, but they still expect a healthy functioning relationship. So as a man, you cannot be scared of the version of yourself you have to become to really love a woman properly. So you have to actually transform and develop yourself to actually be in a healthy relationship, right? Most men, they are unwilling to grow, unwilling to develop themselves emotionally, right? I see the lack of emotional maturity a lot, and too many men, they shy away from healing their childhood trauma or even their love trauma from the past, from past romantic relationships. They're not going back and reflecting on them. They're not learning from their mistakes. Men are not really thinking back about the different instances where they went wrong, right? And most men are just refusing to emotionally be present in a romantic relationship. You're not safe to be around. You're not consistent with your actions, and you're not self-aware in romantic relationships, right? So the truth is, you men fear looking in the mirror. You don't want to look at yourself and realize that these behaviors that you're getting into, the punishments that you use on women, it's really weak, and it's coming from an unhealed version of yourself, right? I know men, it will take effort to be mature and to develop integrity, and most men, you are staying lazy and you're staying stagnant in your old patterns just because you've never really thought about working on yourself, doing self-development. And in this video, I'm going to talk about what is intimacy, and because that is something that most men need to work on, right? They need to work on intimacy, and I'm gonna give you 6 powerful things that you could do to create more intimacy in your relationship as a man. So what is intimacy in a romantic relationship? Intimacy is the feeling of closeness. It's feeling connected to your partner. It's that emotional bond you feel in a romantic relationship, and it involves trust and vulnerability, and it involves mutual respect. So it goes beyond physical connection or any sexual closeness that you're thinking, right? It's beyond that. It's sharing your deepest thoughts, feelings, needs, expectations, and vulnerabilities with your partner. So if you're gonna do all of that, it will require a lot of patience and effort, and the willingness to be open and honest about your hopes, your fears, your expectations, your dreams, feelings, thoughts, and all the experiences that you've had. So it's being open and having patience and being willing. It's built on, and to do all of that and to have intimacy in a romantic relationship, it is built on communication and also being receptive to each other and showing support. And these 3 things, communication and showing respect and being supportive. You men have a lot of problem with doing that. So I'm gonna give you 6 simple ways you can create real intimacy in your romantic relationship. So this is if you genuinely want a romantic relationship and you're genuinely interested in your romantic partner, right? So intimacy requires accountability, and accountability is one of the major things that most men lack, especially when it comes to romantic relationship, dating, and being involved with women. And most men panic at the thought of being accountable for their actions and words. Anytime they have to be responsible, take accountability, there's a problem, right? But then you still want love, you still want attention, you love validation, you love when people understand you want to be accepted, you want the woman's softness, and many other things. But when it's time to make an apology or change a bad habit or be emotionally responsible and correct any type of disrespectful behavior, you suddenly need space, or you suddenly have a problem, or you're saying you're not used to that, or you don't feel ready, or when you need to apologize, when you need to change a bad habit or something, you ghost, you disappear, off the earth, you act unbothered, you act indifferent, you're nonchalant, or you go missing for hours, days, or even months. Some men, it's crazy. So these behaviors, they need to stop. To create intimacy, you need to be accountable, right? Some men, you believe that not putting effort or just doing the bare minimum and being unwilling to grow and refusing to be mature, you believe that you're still gonna get a meaningful, close connection with your romantic partner, and that's not going to happen, right? So when I say being accountable, right? How being accountable creates intimacy? Well, that's the question. How to show accountability in a romantic relationship? And I'm going to spend a little more time on this accountability because it's one of the major problems with men. So one of the first things you could do is just try to admit when you are wrong, right? Immediately you admit when you are wrong. You could say, I was wrong, I should not have done that, I understand how that affected you, and you have to actually try to understand, right? You don't make excuses, you don't shift the blame, you don't flip the situation on the woman, you don't be defensive, and many other things that men do to punish, right? You need to admit when you're wrong, right? You need to take responsibility for your actions without being defensive. You need to listen without interrupting, listen without manipulating, gaslighting, listen and actually be concerned, genuinely concerned, without minimizing her feelings and turning yourself into this victim, right? You need to correct your behavior, not just apologize. Some men, you just say sorry and you're saying sorry and you're not saying sorry for what you have done, because most of the time you're not even sure what you did wrong, because you lack self-awareness so much and you're so caught up in your own life and what you got going on. So it will be difficult for you to even think about why you're sorry and how your actions could affect that woman. So you need to actually correct behavior, not just say sorry just to get the person out your face. You need to apologize with change. If you apologize without change, it's manipulation. You apologize and you do the same behavior, that's manipulation, right? You need to maybe set a reminder to have this important conversation. Set a reminder to take time to listen and apologize. If you raise your voice, work on emotional control. If you're inconsistent, you need to become consistent. These are things that will create intimacy, right? Also communicate clearly and work on communication skills instead of disappearing, right? Accountable men who are mature, emotionally mature, who takes accountability and who are responsible, they don't ghost, they don't avoid difficult conversations, they don't shut down, they don't stonewall, they don't gaslight, they're not dismissive, they're not giving silent treatment, right? They are mature, they are emotionally mature, they worked on themselves, they have integrity, and they could, even if they're not perfect, they might be frustrated, they might be angry, they might say that, I need a moment, but I'm not going to leave, let's talk about this when I'm a little calm or when my head is more level, and mature men, they will stay connected even after conflict. They're still connected. Immature men now, maybe you have conflict, they start to be cold, they start to be distant, start to go missing and all of these things. That's immaturity. So you really need to work on yourself and get to know, what triggers you, and try to be better and heal from past trauma and heartbreak, right? So it means that you need to know your traumas, you need to know your temper, you need to know your insecurities that you have, you need to know your emotional patterns or the punishments that you use. You need to stop doing this. You need to work on these issues that you have so you don't damage the relationship you have. Especially if you have a good woman in your life, your relationship is going to end if you continue to be irresponsible and immature. So you don't want to be saying things like, I'm just like that, or I had a hard upbringing and I'm just like that, or yeah, I'm sorry, I'll work on it, and you don't change your behavior and you're not working on it. You don't do things like that, right? You have to keep your word, right? Also, this is having integrity. If you say simple things, okay, I'll call you right back, call back. If you say you're going to do something, you do it. If you say I'll be there at 9:30, you be there at 9:30. If something happens, like there's an accident or something come up, there's an emergency, you call. That's having respect for the person's time. You call and you say that you had an emergency or you will be late or something like that. That is showing respect, right? So if you say you're gonna fix something, you fix it. That is having integrity, keeping your word, and especially as a man, keeping your word should be very important, right? And you should also know how to repair conflict. Very important. The lack of knowing how to repair conflict could cause a relationship, right? Cause you to break up, right? You don't need to pretend that nothing happened. You need to stop pretending that nothing happened or ignore the problem. You need to actually be the one to initiate the conversation and say, let's talk about it, I want to understand this better. You might actually not understand what's going on. You have to be open-minded and try to figure out how can you fix the issue together. So that will build trust, and that will build your connection and your intimacy. So you also need to make the relationship a priority, right? So you should show through your actions that she matters to you. You don't wait until she's complaining before you step up your game. You have to make sure that she knows that she matters to you, and that her feelings matter, and her opinions matter, and her experience with you should actually matter, right? So to do all of this, right, there's certain things you could do to make your relationship a priority, and that is just one thing you could do to make a relationship a priority is to be consistent with communication, right? If your relationship is important to you, you're gonna communicate every single day, and you're gonna call, you're gonna text, you're gonna check in every single day, and you would never disappear for hours, days, months. You would never disappear, right? If your relationship is a priority, you have to make time. No matter if you're busy, you're gonna create time in your schedule, even if you're busy, right? No excuses. You're gonna have date nights, you're gonna have quality time together, regular meetups, shared experiences. Just show that you're committed and that you're interested in how in the relationship, right? You should plan things in advance. This winging it and just going along with whatever happened is not going to work. It's showing that she's not a priority, that she's not important to you. You know what I mean? So instead of saying, okay, what are we doing? You say, Friday night we're going here, or you plan something and you say, and you made reservations for dinner on Saturday night, and you actually made reservations. I want to take you to this place this weekend, or you're making effort, you're showing that you care, and you're planning in advance, and that is showing that you're prioritizing the relationship, right? So the next thing you could do is show up when she needs you. Whenever there's a hard circumstance, you are there. Whenever she's stressed, sad, frustrated, overwhelmed with work, you should show up. Don't push it to the side. Don't say eventually you will. You have to be present. Being present is a form of showing love and care. Some men disappear off the earth when they know that their woman is going through some hard circumstance, and that is showing that you don't care. And some men actually don't care. So you need to be involved in her life, right? You should be involved in her goals, routines, whatever struggle she's going through, you should be there to help, assist, celebrate her wins, and you should be curious about her personal world. If she's a priority, she becomes part of your life, not just when you have some free time, you think you're gonna just call her up and you have nothing planned, right? Some men, they think being in a relationship and a commitment means that you don't need to plan. You just wing it and just meet whenever. That's not going to work, right? So your relationship should be a priority, and that's how you create intimacy. So you need to protect your relationship, right? When I say protect your relationship, for example, you don't entertain outside people who threaten the connection, right? You don't flirt randomly with other women. You don't disrespect your woman. You don't have disrespectful behaviors. You don't have hidden conversations online. You're not liking Instagram photos. You behave like you have something precious to lose. You cannot be liking pictures on Instagram and all of these things. Flirting, creating triangulation, creating conflict. This is unnecessary, and it shows that your relationship is not a priority, right? Another thing is that you would walk through problems instead of running away. A mature man don't run away from problems. A man who prioritizes his relationship stays even in uncomfortable conversations, difficult conversation. He will listen, he will communicate, and he would try to repair the connection instead of retreating and shutting down and acting cold and immature, right? The next thing, you have to help carry the emotional load. Most of the time the woman is carrying the emotional load in the relationship. You have to support her emotionally, mentally, and practically. You shouldn't expect her to do all the emotional labor, all the planning, all the initiating, all the remembering everything, right? You also need to talk about the future, right? Talk about the future with her. If you prioritize her, you would automatically include her in your vision, the future that you have. For example, you're thinking about vacation, and you're saying, we should travel here, or we are going to move there, or let's open this business together. Whatever it is, you're including her in your future. You see her in your future. That's if you're serious about her and the relationship. You would also want to make her feel wanted, not like she's an option. So she would never have to wonder, where she stands in the relationship. If you're taking her seriously, if you value her, you shouldn't have a woman in your life wondering where she stands, and wondering if she's taken seriously, and wondering if you really care about her, wondering if you really love her. Your actions should make these intentions obvious, right? And that's how some men, they get cheated on. They allow the woman to be open to other men because she don't know where she stands. You're not showing her that she's a priority. You disappear for many hours, days, months, and think you're still in a relationship. You don't plan dates. You're not organized. These are things that's gonna make somebody just think that they're not important to you, right? So that's the first one, is accountability. That's how you create intimacy. And the second one is that intimacy requires emotional honesty. So instead of being honest, most men, they hide behind their jobs, they hide behind big ego, they hide behind pride. Instead of being honest, they use silent treatment, they're indifferent. They think that having sex would fix the problem. Men, some men, you would do anything to avoid apologizing, to avoid saying or admitting that you feel insecure about something. Sometimes you might need to admit that you don't know how to love properly, you don't have empathy, you're not sure what you're doing. Sometimes you really need to admit, being honest, that you're confused and you don't know how to have a peaceful relationship. You don't know how to have a loving relationship. Or you be honest and you say, at that time I was overwhelmed and confused, frustrated, and I disappeared, and that was wrong, and you're sorry, and you change behavior. You have to be honest. You should own up to your feelings. You should admit and say, I felt disappointed, or I'm not sure how to resolve this. Women would respect you more if you're honest. If you say, I need to work on my communication skills, I don't have the tools to have this conversation. You need to admit things like that, instead of acting out and being silent and distant and having attitude and creating conflict, creating arguments, being full of pride, don't want to apologize, and all of these hogwash behavior. You need to stop hiding behind pride and ego, especially, instead of shutting down, acting cool, pretending that you don't care. You really should express what is really going on with you. And to do that, you actually might need to tap into your own emotions, right? So it's best that you be clear, straightforward, frank, communicate to your best ability, instead of being passive aggressive and indifferent and whatever. But some men genuinely don't care, right? But anyways, this video is for men who actually care, genuinely interested in their romantic partner, and want to create more intimacy in their relationship, right? So the next thing, intimacy requires consistency. This is another big problem with most men. They're not consistent, right? We women, most of us, we see men showing up when it's convenient to them, right? You show up when it's convenient to you. You show up when you're bored. You show up when you want attention. You show up when You want validation. You show up when you want approval. You show up when you want to have sex. You show up when you need, your ego need a little topping up. You show up when you want to boost your confidence a little. You show up when you're lonely. You show up when you need money. You show up when you need a favor. You show up when you need some material thing. You show up when you need to use the woman's possessions. You show up when you need transport. You show up when you need help with your laundry. You show up when you need help to organize this. You're showing up when it's convenient to you, right? And you might not be a bad person genuinely, but showing up when you just feel bored, lonely, need money, need your ego topping up or whatever, that would not work, right? And it's crazy because you look selfish and cold because you are nowhere to be found when your partner really need emotional support. You're nowhere to be found when your partner need genuine love and care and concern. But you show up when you're bored and when you feel lonely and you need a favor, right? You need to be consistent, right? And that involves always being there to listen and to understand, not always trying to judge or fix. Being consistent also involves, letting your partner talk without interruptions, not dismissing her pain, not taking, you don't take her feeling seriously. Being consistent means you're always going to be there no matter what, to listen. You're not gonna be dismissive. So when I say you're consistent in your behavior, so she would feel safe to come to you. You're not gonna be dismissive and say you're overreacting or you're overthinking things or just forget about it, it's not that serious, or you're too hard to deal with, hard to handle. This is very dismissive and it's insensitive, right? And you always need to be open to listen, right? You need to also validate her emotions. Many men, you make women feel like they are crazy for being a human, that they are crazy for having emotions, right? You need to actually say things like, I understand why you feel that way, and you genuinely have to understand why your actions affect her, right? You need to say things like, that song's really difficult, or that song's really hard. Your feelings make sense. And you actually have to try to sympathize and have empathy with what is going on with her. You have to genuinely listen to understand, and you have to practice to have empathy. Most men, they don't have empathy, they lack empathy. Most men are cold, insensitive, but if you want to have a loving, healthy relationship, you really need to practice empathy. You really need to work on the listening skills, right? So consistency is very important. We have to also check in consistently, not once in a while. You have to check in every day. You have to know how she's feeling every day. If she's stressed out about something, if she's sleeping well. These are just examples. If she ate well enough today. Did something happen at work? Did something happen at home? Did something happen between her friends? You need to be consistent, checking in. Anything could happen any day. You can't just check in once in a while. Some men, they're waiting for the woman to check in and checking on them. That's really crazy, right? You also need to create a safe space. You're the safe person, right? Where she could be vulnerable with. That's why you need to be consistent in your behavior. You can't be one day you're understanding and the next day you're cold and dismissive. It have to be consistent. She need to you need to be you need to behave in a way where she feels safe to be confused, upset about something. She could share her concerns, issues with you, and she know that you're gonna be stable, you're gonna be calm, you're not gonna lash out. You need to let her feel safe so that she don't have to pretend all the time, right? Pretend, that's all. So you have to show emotional support, right? Showing emotional support involves having patience, speaking gently, good tone of voice, reassure her, offer physical comfort, learn what affects her emotionally, help her to feel calm, not anxious. Some women, they get around their partner, hopefully this is not you, they feel more anxious, they feel more stressed, they feel more confused, they're on the edge when they're around you. She should feel a relief when she gets around you. She should feel less tension, less stress. There should be less chaotic. Life is already hard. To come around you and to feel more stress and to feel that your life is more chaotic and there's more tension, you're creating problems, you're creating arguments, you have attitude, you're difficult to deal with. Nobody wants to be around a man like that, right? You don't punish with silence and you stonewall. All of these, this is you need to stop all of this vanishing and stonewalling, shutting down. These are immature behaviors, right? Punishing women, gaslighting them, you ghosting, and you cold after conflict. It is so immature. It's a turn off, right? It's a turn off to beg for attention. You beg for attention. She guessing what's going on in the relationship, not sure where she stand, hoping that you will get better, and you never get better. You stay the same, stagnant, never improve. Have potential, the most potential, the potential stuck, never comes out. You make her feel like a burden. You have, when you're showing emotional support, you need to be there. Showing emotional support means you're there when things are uncomfortable and you make it better. You're there when things are difficult, you make it better. You're there when there's a hard circumstance. I experienced this and other women experience this. When there's a hard circumstance, nowhere to be found. Men are nowhere to be found when there's a hard circumstance. Right? This ghosting is very immature. Effort is required to have a healthy relationship, right? The next thing to intimacy requires you, or the next way to create more intimacy in a relationship is that you have to allow her to see the real you, right? Intimacy requires you to allow her to see who you really are. A lot of men, they fake their whole personality, fake their character. You cannot fake your character for too long. Faking your personality, faking that you're friendly, kind, loving. The mask will slip. The mask will slip. Sooner or later, men mask slip in 2 weeks, a month. The mask slip. 2 months, the mask start to slip. Right? Most men, you're wearing a mask. You're showing that you're confident and you're good and nothing is wrong with you, and you're hyper independent and you have this confidence and You show that you're kind and you're friendly and you're fake. You faking you want a relationship. If you don't want a relationship, don't fake you want a relationship just to have sex. I talk about that, I can't remember, previous videos. This video is for men who actually genuinely want a relationship. They're genuinely interested in a woman. They really want to experience healthy relationship and love. This video is not for people who are fake and who would use these things that I'm saying, these advice to manipulate, right? So most men are walking around emotionally numb and walking around like you're untouchable and nothing is wrong with you. When eventually, as time passes, we women, we see your childhood wounds coming out. We see that you don't want to talk about your past romantic relationships. You don't want to talk about why you are the way you are. But eventually your mask will slip and we'll see. And some of us, we know you fear abandonment. That's why you act like you're detached, and that's why you become quiet and like you don't care, because you kind of know who you really are. You know who you really are, so that's why you become detached and you're quiet and you avoid the uncomfortable conversation, because you know who you are, because you haven't developed yourself. You know your real personality. You know you lack integrity. You know you didn't work on your character. That's why you have to disappear. You didn't work on yourself. You don't know what is consistency. That is why, even if you genuinely love someone, want to be in a healthy relationship, one day you love it, one day you cold, one day you're intense with intimacy, the next day you're cold, one day you close, the next day you pull back, you're picking fights, you're pushing her away, you're inconsistent, pure hogwash behavior, dysfunctional behavior. And then you start to wonder why is she losing interest? Why she don't want to be sexually intimate with me anymore? Pure hogwash behavior. Who wants to be sexually intimate with somebody who hot, cold, in, out, appear, disappear, detached, nonchalant, go miss it? Like, you fear abandonment because you know who you really are. You know you have insecurities. Everybody have insecurities, flaws. Everybody have weaknesses. It's just that you have to work on it. But what you do instead, most men hide behind avoidance and indifferent, defensive, and all of these punishments you use. Some of us know you're just insecure. You don't want to feel guilty. You don't want to feel shame. People make mistakes. It's just to understand the mistake and be better. And that's the problem. You're lazy. Emotionally lazy. Don't want to be better. Stuck in your ways. Stuck in patterns that's not working for you. Pretending that you have all this confidence and you don't. You're insecure. You withhold your affection, you withhold softness because you don't want to be judged, because you know who you are. And you have so much pride and your ego so big. You would lose a good woman, and you have lost good women. And you will continue to lose good women for the rest of your life if you don't change. Most men don't change, just stay the same in their comfort zone, right? So intimacy requires respect. Men, they confuse intimacy with possessing the woman. You think intimacy is controlling her or having access to her at any moment. You think intimacy is checking her phone, checking her location, hacking her phone, controlling who she talks to, expecting to have sex whenever you want, thinking that is gonna fix everything. Lazy, not fixing the recurring problems in the relationship. And you think that you're gonna have a healthy, loving relationship. You think your woman is gonna be happy when you keep having the same conflict over and over again. You don't change. You give the bare minimum and you still want loyalty, you still want closeness. You give the bare minimum and expect to have closeness and equal, like she want to be intimate with you, sexually intimate with you, interested in you, attracted to the bare minimum. Intimacy is when a man respect feelings, you respect her emotions, you respect her boundaries, needs, you respect her feminine energy, and you respect the pace of the woman. Sorry. And to do this, you need to have discipline and you need emotional intelligence, right? Something that most men don't have is emotional intelligence. Most men were never taught emotional intelligence, or did they ever try to learn about, what is emotional intelligence and how to develop it. That's why you keep having the same problems with women. And as a man, to gain emotional intelligence, you need to work on self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, and accountability. Work on those 4 things, right? And having these will improve your relationship. When you have self-awareness, self-regulation, you work on your empathy, you work on being accountable, she will feel safe to be around you. She will feel relaxed being around you. You're not exploding, you're not withdrawing, you're not hiding behind anger and silence and silent treatment. You're not doing all of these hogwash behavior, immature behaviors. When you develop emotional intelligence, you would have less conflict, more communication. You know to have a calm tone of voice. You're not defensive. You're willing to understand. You pause if you feel triggered and angry, right? Mm-hmm. You would have few misunderstandings when you validate her emotions. If you're not sure about what you're doing, you need to ask about your actions and how it affects her and how she feels about this. If you're not sure, that you ask questions. With emotional intelligence, when you develop that, you will have a deeper emotional connection. You have better sexual connection, and you apologize and you change behavior. You would have a healthy relationship. When you repair conflict with honesty, you will develop closeness and intimacy, right? She will be more open to you, right? So intimacy also requires you to do the work, like healing yourself, being self-aware, growing, being better. Might need to go to therapy depending on how bad it is. Your childhood trauma, love trauma, working on your character. You need to reflect on your past actions, introspect, and all of these things. This takes work. You have to work on yourself. Most men, you are doing the bare minimum and you want the maximum in return. It's a turn off, right? Big turn off. You think love should be easy and you should rock back and you put You put your feet up and you give the bare minimum, or you give no effort at all. And you're saying things like, you should accept me as how I am, and without any effort to change your behavior or try to be better. Obviously, she's going to be turned off. More than likely, your relationship is going to end if you're going to continue like this without doing the work, right? You want the benefits of intimacy and you don't want to be responsible. That doesn't make sense. You want to be loved deeply, you want attention, you want affection, but you refuse to become the man who can handle deep love. A man who wants to handle deep love have to be emotionally intelligent and mature, right? And some of the things you could start to work on if you're serious about this, serious about having a healthy relationship, serious about actually experiencing real love, you're serious about your commitment, and you're actually genuinely interested in the woman that you're with, you need to face your own emotions. Not burying them under anger, avoidance, indifferent. You must understand what you're feeling first before you start to share yourself with somebody else, right? You should try to understand who you are first, right? You heal your fears. Most men have fear of vulnerability, fear of not being good enough. But you have to improve your character. You have to work on your character and your integrity. Fear of being seen. You have to be better, because your mask will slip, and it's embarrassing to know that, or it's embarrassing for a woman to know that you faking your personality, right? You need to take accountability. These are things that you should just start to do, is take accountability for your actions. Stop shifting the blame. Stop minimizing the woman's feelings. Stop being defensive, shutting down. It's so unattractive. You look so immature. You need to own up to your mistakes and change and be better. You need to learn emotional intelligence. It's very important. Listening skills, to listen actively. That's a really, really, really big problem with men. Cannot listen. Lack of listening skills, lack of reasoning skills, lack of communication skills. This is pure hogwash behavior women are seeing from men. Cannot regulate emotions, angry, wrath, outbursts, cannot communicate clearly, lack empathy, cannot repair conflict, cold after conflict. It's disgusting, and it's very dysfunctional, and you need to change if you are doing all these hogwash behaviors. You have to be stable and you have to be consistent. That is what you need to work on. You must show up the same way almost every day. Your actions, your intentions, your everyday. Your energy must be the same. You're not in and out, hot and cold. You're intense. You're showing intimacy and it's intense one day and then cold and indifferent the next day. You need to work on being stable and consistent. You also need to have respect and discipline. You need to respect yourself, and respecting yourself for me is having integrity, keeping your word. How could you be a man and you say something and you don't do it? Aren't you ashamed of yourself? You're talking about this, you're gonna do that. You're talking about how we're gonna do this, and you're coming and you're gonna help with that and you don't show up, that's just disgusting to me. That's the lack of respect for yourself. You know, you need to stop playing games, stop running from uncomfortable conversation, stop running from hard conversation, disappearing, being cold. It's very immature. You know, you need to have integrity and you need to build your character, right? So women can't create intimacy by themselves, right? Women can be open, we can be caring, we can be kind, we emotionally available to you. But if you don't, as men, do the self-work, if you don't work on yourself, you're going to shut down. You're going to be immature. You're going to lash out. You're going to avoid hard conversation. You're going to disappear. If you don't work on yourself, you're going to stonewall. You're going to be defensive, and it's very unattractive. And when you do all of these hogwash behavior, woman, the person you're with, we're feeling unheard, we feel unseen, we feel dismissed, we feel emotionally unsafe, that we can't come to you with an issue, we can't come to you with a problem, walking on eggshells, giving us anxiety, making us sad, stressed out, causing depression. And she will feel like she has to be fighting to be understood. And it destroys the intimacy. Eventually, nobody want to be sexually she would not want to be sexually intimate with you, right? You have to be mature and forget about having all this pride and your ego so big and full of pride. Can't apologize. Men need to forget about being comfortable and being lazy and you're laid back. You're doing the bare minimum and you're still expecting her to be attracted to you and interested in you automatically. From what? Hogwash behavior. It's time to grow and develop yourself as a man. Learn how to sit with discomfort, have hard conversations, and know when you're wrong and be willing to change, right? So at the end of the day, some men, you say you want a healthy relationship, but a healthy relationship requires intimacy, and intimacy requires work, right? You cannot fear emotional closeness. You cannot avoid accountability and hide behind silence and expect a woman to feel safe with you and attracted to you. You cannot demand love. You want loyalty, you want respect, and you refuse to be consistent. You refuse to respect yourself. You refuse to respect the woman. You're not honest. A real relationship is built on seeing each other clearly, doing emotional work. You're choosing to grow. You're choosing to be better. You can't keep running away from things that actually create a good connection, right? Can't be saying you're too emotional, you're overthinking, you're too hard to. You cannot be dismissive like that. If you want a healthy relationship, you have to do inner work. You have to face your fears. You have to develop emotional intelligence. You have to be consistent. You need to communicate like an adult. You need to practice empathy. Most men lack empathy, and you need to show up with effort. You cannot give the bare minimum. Intimacy is not an option in a relationship. It is the foundation, and the moment you stop fearing it is the moment you will finally experience real love. And yeah, that's what I wanted to say. That's the video for men. So hopefully this help. If men are watching this, I know there are more women on this channel watching me. Hopefully this helps men, and you could like the video, you could subscribe. And thanks for watching, and good luck if you decide to do this walk, and see you in the next video.